Putamscha Om Agyantamirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadha Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Janmadyasya Yatunvaya Ditarata Shtarite Shvabhigya Swarat Tene Brahma Hridhaya Adhikavaye Muhyanti Asuraya Tejo Vari Mridam Yata Venimayo Yatra Trisargo Mrisha Dhamna Svena Sadhana Rastakuakam Satyam Param Dhimahi Om Tat Sat. Okay, Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th Canto, Chapter 3. The Yamadutas, in their frustration, inquired from Yamaraj. Their inquiries were about who is the supreme authority, basically, of the universe. They thought that Yamaraj was that supreme one, but seeing that his orders were checked by the Vishnu Dutas, they doubted whether he was a supreme one, and maybe if there was one above him. They explained that there can't really be many ultimate authorities because then those many ultimate authorities may agree and then that may disagree. And in that way, everyone gets punished or no one gets punished. It'll become completely complicated. So there has to be a supreme authority under which everyone else is obliged, to whom everyone else is obliged. So they inquired about that. They also inquired about the Vishnu Dutas, who are these four extraordinary persons who had checked them. So Yamaraj now giving response to these questions of the Yamadutas. That's where we left off. So I think we're on verse 12. First 5 verses, Yamaraj is speaking about Supreme Lord, that supreme person who is above him. So Yama Uvacha. Paro matanyo jagatas tastushascha otam protam partava yatra vishwam yadangshato stiti janmanasha nasyo tava yasya vashe chaloka. So, my dear servants, you have accepted me as a supreme, but factually I am not. Above me and above all the other demigods, including Indra and Chandra, is the one supreme master and controller. The partial manifestation of his personality of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, who are in charge of the creation, maintenance, and annihilation of this universe. He is like the 2 threads that form the length and breadth of a woven cloth. The entire world is controlled by him, just as a bull is controlled by a rope in its nose. So, paro ma anyat. So he says, there is another that is superior to me. So you thought that I was a supreme, but there's another who is superior to me. Jagatas tastu shashta. And he is the controller of the moving and non-moving. So of everyone in the cosmos, because Yamaraj, and Prabhupada's commentary is speaking to this point, Yamaraj is just the controller of a few living entities. First of all, he's controller of some of the living entities in the moving category. So there are many in the moving category like fish and mammals and so on, but he is not the controller of all of them. He's only the controller of some of the humans who commit sinful activities. So he's controlling just a small portion of the living entities. But there's another above him who's controlling everyone, all the moving and non-moving. So all the moving means the fish, the mammals, the birds, the devatas, etc. So he's the controller of all of them. Otam protam patava yatra vishram. This person is one in whom yatra vishram, in whom the universe is residing. Partava, like a cloth. Otam protam. These words, otam protam, if you look them up, they're used everywhere in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and probably in a lot of scriptures are used together. The universe is compared to a cloth that is essentially the woven threads vertically and horizontally. So just as a cloth, like your shirt, you have a shirt on. So just as your shirt is essentially the effect whose cause is the threads woven together vertically and horizontally. So the Supreme Lord is like the threads that underpin everything in the cosmos. So Yatra Vishram, the universe is resting in him, just as a woven cloth rests on the threads. We don't normally think about it like that. At least I certainly never thought about a cloth like that. But the cloth as we see it is resting on or depending on the threads that comprise it. Krishna says this also similar statement in the Gita Mataha Parataram na anya kinchit asidananjaya sutre manaiva. After telling Arjuna that he is the creator and destroyer of the living of everything we see in this world, then he says he is also the maintainer. And he gives the analogy that he is like the thread on which the pearl necklace is resting. So when you see a pearl necklace, you appreciate the pearls, but you don't see the thread that's holding it together. So Krishna said he is that thread on which everything is being held together. The integrity of the cosmos is being held together by the Supreme Lord. But just as you don't see the thread, you only see the pearl necklace. So you don't see the Supreme Lord who is behind the universe. He is the threads behind the manifest cloth, which is the universe. So the other idea of this otam protam is that the cloth is the effect and the threads are the cause. So there's a little bit of distinction between them, between threads and between like the manifest cloth that you're wearing, for example. So the universe is not a little bit different from the Supreme Lord, who's its ultimate cause. There's some distinction there. At the same time, it is non-different because the cloth existence is not possible without the threads. So the universe existence is not possible without the Supreme Lord. So there's a non-difference there insofar as the universe rests on God, but there's some difference also there. So this is some of the different angles of this analogy, which is used quite a bit in the Srimad Bhagavatam also. Otam protam patava yatra vishram. So Yadangshato, his amshas for the creation, maintenance, and annihilation of the universe are Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And Nasyotava Yasyava Chaloka. He is controlling the whole world. Vashe Chaloka. The whole world is being controlled. Nasyotava. Just like a bull in whom, a bull, he is having one nose piercing, usually you can see in India, especially, and they attach one rope to the nose ring, and in that way they can control the movements of the bull. So all the living entities in this world are like that. We're like bulls with nose rings in our nose and being pulled by the different ropes of the Vedic injunction. So that's actually the next verse. We're all controlled, translated here, just as a bull is controlled by a rope in its nose. So we are all controlled like that. So this is taken a little bit further in the next verse, this control of the Supreme Lord. Yanama bhirvachi janam nijayam, vadnanti tatram iva dhamma bhirga. Tantram iva dhamma bhirga. So just as the driver of a bullock cart ties ropes to the nostrils of his bulls to control them, tantram iva dhamma bhirga. The Supreme Personality of Godhead binds all men through the ropes of his words in the Vedas. So Yonama Birvachi Janam Nijayam Vadnanti. So we're all bound by the injunctions of the Vedas which emanate from the Supreme Lord. That is the extension of this analogy. Yasmai Bhalim Ta Ime Nama Karma Nibhanda Bhadash Chakita Vahanti. So all people, Taime, all people are offering tribute to the Supreme Lord. Yasma Bhalim are offering tribute to the Supreme Lord. Chakita Vahanti, with fear. Fear means with the fear of consequences. They're offering the tribute with the fear of consequences. Nama karma nibhada bhadash. Because they are bound by the cords of nama and karma. So here, this means that nama here means, for example, you take birth with the swabhava of a Brahma karma swabhavajam. Let's say you have the swabhava of a brahmana. So you're giving the nama. The nama is brahmana. And because of that swabhava, you have a obligation that is called swadharma, right? Or karma to perform, for example, Vedic yagyas. So you are bound to do so. Not that you are having different options, just like Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita. He argues in the first chapter that if he fights in the war, that he'll incur sinful activity. And Krishna refutes that by saying that actually, if you don't fight in the war, you'll incur sinful activity because your swadharma is to fight. Or at least that's part of your swadharma based on your swabhava. So you got this nam, kshatriya, so you are bound to a certain type of karma. Karma nibhada bhadas. And if you don't perform that, then that is called as sinful activity. So you're bound to do that. So everyone is bound to offer tribute to the Supreme Lord by performing their prescribed duties, basically, according to their condition in life. Someone says, well, I'll not do it. So then you'll be bound in another way, in the form of punishment. Just like when you live now our society is falling apart, so it's hard to give examples, but in a properly organized society, there are laws and you're bound to follow the laws. So someone may say, I'll not follow the laws. Then you'll follow the law from in prison. That is the meaning there. So it's not that it's optional. You are forced to follow. And if you break the law, then you'll be punished. So everyone is bound by the laws of the Supreme Lord. If they don't know them, too bad. You still get punished. Just like if you go to a different country and you break the law, you're going to say, well, I didn't know that was the law. That's okay. You still get to be punished. So one may not know the laws of God, still they are bound to follow them. And if they break them out of ignorance or out of impudence, either way, you get punished. Such is the severity of the laws of God. Now, this is true of everyone. Yasmai bhalam te ime. Ta ime means all of them, all the living entities in this world, from the smallest species of life all the way up to the highest devata, all are bound by the laws of God. That's what Yamaraj is wanting to say to the Yamadutas. So no one is beyond the control of God. He is that supreme one. He is that supreme one to whom everything is to be offered, if even out of fear. Chakitava hanti. Okay. So next verse, carrying on, most people do not know the Supreme Lord because they are touched by Maya. That is the purpose of this particular verse. First verse is a list of all the elites of the universe. The universe has its elites also, the devatas. So the first verse is just a long list of the elites. And the first line also of the second verse is a continuation of the list of the elites. And they're described here as asprishta rajas tamaska. They are not touched by rajas and tamas because the devatas are generally understood to be predominated by the sattva guna. This word will also be used, sattva pradhana. They're chiefly considered in the sattva guna. So asprishta rajas tamaska. So they're not touched by rajas and tamas, these elites. The elites of the universe are not touched by rajas and tamas. Still, they cannot know the Supreme Lord. Yasya ihitam na vidu sprishtamaya. They cannot know the Supreme Lord, his purpose. Ihitam navidu means they don't know his ihitam, means his like purpose when he's doing stuff in this world or above. They do not know that. Why? Sprishtamaya. Because we are touched by Maya. Sattva pradhan api, even though we're chiefly in the mode of goodness, so the mode of goodness is related to illumination, right? Krishna says in the Gita, when speaking of the mode of goodness, that one of its qualities is prakasham. It gives illumination, right? Sattva means the ability to perceive. Sattva is connected to like revelation or perception, a clear perception. So sattva pradhana, we're api, even though we're chiefly in sattva guna, so we know so much. Still, we cannot know the Supreme Lord because sattva guna is still Maya, sprishta Maya. The Lord is beyond Maya. This is Krishna says in Gita also, Tri bhir gunamayer bhavar ibi sarvami damjaga mohitam nabijananti mam ebhya paramavya. So Krishna says all the states that we encounter in this world, they're of rajas, sattva, tamas, but the living entities, we are bewildered by these three gunas, and therefore we do not know him, the Supreme Lord, who's situated beyond the gunas. So if sattva pradhanapi, even we who are in the sattva guna cannot know the Supreme Lord because sprishta maya, we're touched by this maya, sattva. Api kem toto anya. Then what to speak of others who are lower situated in the gunas? They cannot know the Supreme Lord. So very hard. This Supreme Lord, who's the controller, is not known generally by people in this world. That's what they want to say. So perhaps it is not surprising. Maybe this is a little bit of sympathy being expressed for the Yamadutas, because they made a mistake thinking the Supreme Lord was Yamaraj. Why do they think like that? Because they're Sprishta Maya. They're touched by Maya. So they did not know who is the actual Supreme Lord. So not knowing, they thought someone else is the Supreme Lord. That's how people think. There would not be a lacuna. So if the absolute truth isn't worship, someone else would be placed in that position by a living entity, and they'll worship that due to Maya. So even the great devatas, they cannot know the Lord or his purposes, what to speak of others. That is what he's saying here. Maybe this gives a little impression that there's some sympathy here. Translation, I'll read. I, Yamaraj Indra, the king of heaven, Niriti Varuna, Chandra, the moon god, Agni, Lord Shiva, Pavana, Lord Brahma, Surya, the sun god, Vishwasu, the eight Vasus, the Sadyas, the Marus, the Rudras, the Siddhas, and Marichi, and the other great rishis engaged in maintaining the departmental affairs of the universe, as well as the best of the demigods headed by Brihaspati, and the great sages headed by Brigu, are all certainly free from the influence of the two base material modes, namely passion and ignorance, right? Nevertheless, although we are in the mode of goodness, sattva pradhana api, we cannot understand the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What then is to be said of others who are under illusion, merely speculate to know God? Who, under illusion, merely speculate to know God? Right. This verse is nicely quoted by all of our acharyas from Bhishma Dev's teachings. The context here is that Yudhishthira Maharaj is completely distraught because, over 600 million people were killed in the battlefield to install him as king. And he is a good person, so he takes it as his fault. And he's needing some solace, some words of succor to relieve him of the pain of feeling responsible for so much death. And so that time, Bhishma Dev is giving instruction to Yudhishthira Maharaj, many nice instructions. And he's giving explanation for how we can respond to suffering, basically, with a little bit of dignity. So there he describes that actually Yudhishthira Maharaj is piety personified, being the son of Yamaraj himself. He is piety personified. Plus, he was protected by Arjuna and Bhima, who is just like power personified. And over and above that, the Supreme Lord was also on his side. Still, despite all these privileges, he suffered like anything. So he said, we can only understand that this suffering must be ordained by God. So it's a little bit hard for people to believe. If something good happens to them in the ordinary understanding of good, then people say, praise God. When something bad or very terrible happens to them, much more difficult to say, praise God. So here, Bhishma giving instruction to Yudhishthira Maharaj saying, praise God. That you have suffered like anything despite being protected by the arms of Bhima and Arjuna, despite being piety personified, despite having the Supreme Lord on your still you suffer like, then that must be God doing something in your life. Praise God. Then he quotes this verse. Nahyasya karichet rajam puman veda vidisitam. Yavijignasaya yukta muhuyanti kavayopi. So this is a famous verse. So he says, O king, no one can know the plan of Lord Shri Krishna. Even though great philosophers inquire exhaustively, they are bewildered. So this verse is an echo of this line here, Yasyehitam navidu, that no one can know the purpose of the Lord because Sprishta Maya, we are all touched by Maya. So this verse is saying not only you, Yamadutas, because you're really situated in lower guna, so you don't know, but even all the way up to these great persons, they also don't know. All of us being touched by Maya. So we get bewildered, as you were bewildered in this mistake you made with Ajamil. Okay. And next verse, this is the fifth verse, still glorifying God. And explain a little bit further why God is not really known. On the one side, spiritual Maya. So we're touched by Maya. So all the products of Maya cannot, we're touched by Maya, which means we're identifying with the products of Maya, such as our senses and mind and so on. So as long as we are identified in that way, then the Supreme Lord cannot be known. Yambai naghobir manasasubhirva hridagira vasuprito vichakshite. So as the different limbs of the body cannot see the eyes, the living entities cannot see the Supreme Lord. This is a translation of the last line. Who is situated as the super soul in everyone's heart, not by the senses, by the mind, by the life air, by thoughts within the heart, or by the vibration of words, can the living entities ascertain the real situation of the Supreme Lord. So naghobir manasasubhirva. So not by the knowledge acquiring senses, which is how we normally gather knowledge in this world. You know, the sense of seeing, smelling, tasting, and so on. Manasa means by thinking in the mind. So that also doesn't work. Asubhir, the word asubhirva. Asubhir means the working senses. So you're moving around in this world, doing some work. So that also you cannot know God. Just like in the Bible, and I think also Ravana and Ramayana, they try to build a staircase to heaven. I don't remember Old Testament so much because I was very, very young. And then my mom said it was all bogus when I was 7. So I kind of got disconnected at that time. But I do remember there was a story, I think, of some story there where they try to build, was it the Tower of Babel, maybe? They try to build a staircase to heaven. And then God made it where everyone spoke different languages so they couldn't communicate with each other. I think that's how the story goes. Anyway, Ravana also does something similar. So you try to, by certain endeavors, know God. That also doesn't work. Hrida, the word hrida here is referring to the samadhi, apparently. It is consciousness without thought. That's how Sri Vishwanath takes it. So manasa is with the thoughts here, and hrida is without the thoughts. It means like samadhi. So even you can go into samadhi, still that time you cannot know the Supreme Lord. Like the yogis, they practice samadhi. Still in that samadhi, they don't get darshan, the Supreme Lord. Gira means by the word. So vasu brito vichakshate. So the living entities cannot know God by any of this because these are all products of Maya. So already previous verse, he said, you're touched by Maya. So here's the touch, these products of Maya, which we identify with. So they cannot be used to know what is beyond on them and what is their source. Who is that? Atmanam, antaridi satam atmanam. That is the super soul who is existing inside the heart of the living entity. So you cannot know. Chakshur yatai vakritayastataparam. So an example is given. It is just like the form. Yata avika yata eva akritaya. So akritaya here was translated as like form. So form is the sense object, right? And chakshur means the sense for seeing the form, right? So the form cannot know the eye. That's basically just like the form cannot know the eye. That's how it's translated. Chakshuryatai vakritayas. The sense object cannot know the sense which reveals it, right? So form is the sense object which is revealed by the sense of seeing, the eye. So if you think about it in terms of like subject object, the eye is existing in the position of subject in relationship to the form. So the object cannot know the subject reveals the object. So in the same way, to taparam. So just like that, the Supreme Lord is higher than Maya. So you cannot use Maya or the products of Maya to know that which is higher. So in this way, no one is knowing the Supreme Lord in this world, and they make a mistake and worshiping someone else. So the 5 verses about the Supreme Lord. All right, enough with the Supreme Lord. We want to know about these siddhas. We specifically ask about them. So this first 5 verses is answer to the first question: who is the Supreme One? So he's giving an answer. Now, what about the siddhas? So then these siddhas are described as very much like the Supreme Lord. So the first line is basically God. Tasyatma tantrasya harer adishitu parasha mayadipate mahatmana. So all of these are adjectives describing Hari. So Hari is, of course, Krishna, the Supreme Lord. He is Atma Tantrasya, self-sufficient or independent. Adishitu, he's the master of everything. Parasya means transcendence. Mayadipati, he's the controller or master of Maya. Mahatmana, the great one, the great soul. So prayena duta iha vaimanoharas. So these dutas of his, they are prayena, almost just like him. Manohara means they are very beautiful. They still the mind. Their beauty stills the mind. And Sri Vishwanath makes a short comment here that just says that he Yamaraj is indicating that y'all are not cute. They're cute. Their beauty stills the mind, but y'all are not like that. Sri Vishwanath gives some comment like this. Charanti Taurupa Gunaswabhava. And they travel here in this world, Taurupa Gunaswabhava, having rupa, form, qualities in nature like that Supreme Lord. So they're very much like God. You're asking about them. First, he described in 5 verses glory of God. Now he's saying these devotees are very much like him. The Supreme Lord is self-sufficient, fully independent. He is the master of everyone and everything, including illusory energy. He has his foreign qualities and features, and similarly, his order carriers, the Vaishnavas, who are very beautiful, possess bodily features, transcendental qualities, and a transcendental nature, almost like his, prayena. They always wander within this world with full independence. So they're like God. Next verse. Don't be envious of them. Bhutani Vishnu, Surapujitani. So these servants of Vishnu, they are Surapujitani. They are worshipped by the great devatas in this world, like even myself. Durdharsha Lingani, Mahabhutani. They are greatly wonderful. Mahabhutani means they are, Abhuta means like astonishing. And Mahabhutani. So they're greatly astonishing. And Durdharsha Lingani means they're very rarely seen. So don't be envious of them. That was a sense given by one of our acharyas. Don't be envious. Thinking, who are these guys? Don't be envious. These are very special people, worshipable by devatas and very rare to sing. Rakshanti ta bhakti mata. They protect devotees in this world. Protect from whom? Parebhyo matascha martya atasarvatascha. They protect them from other inimical persons. They protect them from me, Yamaraj, and my order carriers. And Prabhupada saying, Martyan, they protect from other humans and from everything. Sarvatascha, Prabhupada, as well as from natural disturbances. So Sarvatascha, from everything. These Vaishnavas protect the devotees. Prabhupada has a nice little purport here that I found some inspiration in just considering the state of the world. And Prabhupada writes here, so the Vishnu Dutas are worshipped with respectful obeisances by the demigods and are always very alert to protect the devotees from the Lord, from the hands of enemies, from natural disturbances, and from all dangerous conditions in this material world. Sometimes the members of the Krishna conscious society are afraid of the impending danger of world war and ask what would happen to them if a war should occur. And all kinds of danger, they should be confident of their protection by the Vishnu Dutas, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as confirmed in the Gita, Konteya Pratijanihi Name Bhakta Pranashati. Material, which Krishna says, declared boldly that my devotee never perishes. Material danger is not meant for devotees. This is also confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam. Padam Padam Yavi Padam Natesham. In this material world, there are dangers at every step, but they are not meant for devotees who have fully surrendered Okay, is that like a caveat? Anyway, who have fully surrendered unto the lotus feet of the Lord. The pure devotees of Lord Vishnu may rest assured of the Lord's protection. And as long as they are in the material world, they should fully engage in devotional service by preaching the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Krishna, namely the Hare Krishna movement of Krishna consciousness. I kind of found that inspiring in the context of the world situation. Okay, last two verses here. So Yamadutas may say, if they protect the devotees, why are they defending a dharma? So Yamaraj wants to chastise them that you do not know what is dharma. Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. Na vaividu rishayo napi deva na siddha mukhya asura manusya kuto nu vidyatara charanadya daya. So here he says true dharma is enacted by God. Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. So the true dharma is directly enacted by God. And this Bhagavad Dharma is bhakti, basically. So that Dharma Krishna is directly himself giving. Other dharma is given by Vedas. So this true dharma, so long list, this true dharma is not known by the rishis, by the devas, by the siddhas, by the asuras, by the human beings, by the vidyadharas. Hardly anyone is knowing this dharma. Only the devotees know this dharma. Otherwise, most people know the regular dharma. Trigunya Vishaya Veda, the dharma that is of the three gunas, in which the Yamadutas also spoke of. So that dharma is known by people. But this Bhagavad Dharma, that is not known. And that Bhagavad Dharma is the true dharma. And that is a dharma that the Vishnu Dutas were protecting. So that was the Purva Paksha, basically. At least Sri Vishwanath's comment, he's giving that as Purva Paksha of Yamadutas. If they protect the devotees, why are they supporting a dharma? So he wants to chastise, you don't know what is dharma. Even these great people, the rishis and so on, they don't know what is the true dharma. We'll speak of you. True dharma is enacted by God. That's Bhagavad Dharma. That dharma is bhakti yoga. So you don't know what is true dharma. So the question comes, if no one knows what is the true dharma, then how do we know it exists? So then in this last verse that we'll cover here, no, there are people who know the true dharma. They're called as Mahajana. So here's a list of the 12 Mahajanas. Dharmantu Sakshat Bhagavat Pranitam. No, I just said the verse. I'm thinking Dharmasya Tattvam Nihitam Guhayam. Mahajano Yena Gatasapan. You know this verse. Tarko Pratishta Shrutayo Vibhinam. Nashavrisha Yasha Matam Nabhinam. Dharmasya Tattvam Nihitam Guhayam. Mahajano Yena Gatasapanta. So in that verse, this dharma, true dharma, it's not known by argumentation, even by hearing Shruti, even by hearing the speculations of many thoughtful rishis. The truth of dharma is hidden in the hearts of the Mahajanas, great souls. So you should follow their path, Mahajano Gatasapanta. So here in this verse, you must have heard many times. So this is a list here of 12 Mahajanas mentioned here. And the first verse is the 12. Lord Brahma, Bhagavan Narada, Lord Shiva, the four Kumaras, Lord Kapila, Swayam Bhuvamanu, Prahlad Maharaj, Janak Maharaj, Grandfather Bhishma, Bali Maharaj, Shukadev Goswami, and I myself. So we know the real religious principles. Dwarasha Etavijhanimo. So we, us 12, we are knowing the Dharma Bhagavatam. We know what is Bhagavad Dharma. Because that was a question. Hardly anyone knows Bhagavad Dharma. So Yamadutas may quip, then how we know it exists? Oh, we 12, we are knowing. The 12 Mahajans, we know the Bhagavad Dharma. And this Bhagavad Dharma, Guhyam Vishuddham Durbhodham. It is secret. Vishuddham, it is transcendence. It means beyond the gunas of nature, pure. Durbhodham, and it's difficult to understand. It's difficult to understand because it's beyond the gunas. And as we, now devotees, we're hearing a lot of Bhagavatam, so it becomes more and more reasonable to us. But as you see a lot in the Bhagavatam, the principles of bhakti turn regular dharma upside down. So it gets a little confusing. Just like we'll downplay sin, for example, as this pastime appears to do with Ajamil. Even though he was living a sinful life, by chanting Harinam, that sin was considered to be like the biting of a toothless snake. So when people hear stuff like this, they're like, what? So this guy gets to sin with impunity because he chanted Hare Krishna. But I'm over here working hard, trying to live the pious life, and I make some mistakes and I get punished because that's how those, it becomes difficult to understand, difficult to digest. We always joke with devotees, one of the most, probably for Hindus especially, difficult pills to swallow in Gita. Api chat sudaracharo bhajate mama nanyamba. Sadhureva samanta. A Christian saying, even if my devotee does most abominable activity, he's a sadhu. He should be considered as a sadhu. So here, this fellow working hard to be pious, he make a mistake and he judged harshly. And here the devotee over here falling like anything, but he should be considered sadhu. Falling like anything. Api chasudacharo means even if. So the idea here is that devotees aren't generally doing crazy activities. But even if they do, they should be considered as sadhu. So like this, a lot of the bhakti turns regular dharma upside down. Yesterday we were studying Chaitanya Charitamrita. So there was being described how Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu is like the sun and moon rising together, a very astonishing event. No one has ever seen such a thing. And just as sun and moon drives away darkness, so the sun and moon of Mahaprabhu and Nityananda drives away the darkness of ignorance. So, and then they said the darkness of ignorance begins with Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. So these are called as Purushartha, which means the four aims of human life, purposes of human life. And we were describing yesterday, it means like deontology, which means like the ethics of duty or obligation. So Purushartha is not just like, you could do this. It's like you're intended to do this if you're a human being. And Dharma, Artha, Kama deals with the material life, and Moksha generally with the spiritual life. So in India, everyone in India understands that this is a Purushartha. This is like proper human life that you should pursue the Purushartha. Either as a karmi doing Dharma, Artha, Kama, or as a spiritualist pursuing moksha. So then you come to Gaudiya Vaishnavism, and we say the darkness of ignorance begins with this Purusharthas. So there's a little bit, what? How are you saying this is ignorance? For centuries, people have understood Purushartha this way. And then Gaudiya Vaishnavas come and say this is all ignorance, actually. Especially that moksha one, which is supposed to be the most redeeming of the four. Then Gaudiyas are saying, especially this moksha, this is called cheating. This is the topmost cheating, this moksha one. So these principles are difficult for people to understand. Durbhodam. But if you embrace it, yam gyantva mritam ashnute. If you come to understand it by hearing from Vaishnavas, then you get to enjoy amrita, ambrosia, immortal life. So someone knows the principles of Dharma. Those are the Mahajanas. So we should hear from them. The secret, the transcendence, and although difficult to understand, you can understand it if you hear from them and enjoy immortality. Yes, our Acharya is quoting Gita, where Krishna also speaks of the secret Dharma as bhakti unto himself. And yeah, we have to receive that knowledge from sadhus, mahajanas, bhaktas. Otherwise, how can it be known? Yeah, I think that's it. I feel like I had a couple other points, but I don't have my notepad on me. So I'm going to stop there and see. Yeah. Sorry, I'm looking at some private messages and laughing. Okay. Are there any the private messages are funny. Are there any questions or comments or points?
Hare Krishna.
Haribo.
Haribo Prabhu. Sincere obeisances. Yeah, I've got a couple questions. So first off, Yamaraj is also Dharmaraj. That's the same. Mm-hmm. It's the same personality, right? Yes, okay. Yes. So when you were talking about what Yamaraj is, who he controls, you're just saying the sinful moving living entities. But if he's Dharmaraj, doesn't he in a sense, control everyone who's pious, like who's following Dharma?
Maybe. I mean, that's how Prabhupada spoke of it. So I just was repeating that point.
Oh, okay.
Because he's the one who's sending the Yamadutas, right? So that means he has jurisdiction over the sinful ones. That was the point that was being brought out. So I just repeated that.
Okay. Because my understanding was that, Yamaraj kind of decides what your next body is going to be. So I saw him as the controller of all living entities in that sense.
It doesn't seem that
way. Okay, cool.
Anyway, for bhaktas, who cares? We're worshiping God.
Yeah, that one was kind of a technical question. My next question is more of a preaching-based question. I could see somebody, finding out about the Vedas being the law books and people being punished, whether or not they know, and being like, how is that fair for people to, like, the majority of the world not to know what the rules are? So I just wanted to pose that question, like, how would you respond to somebody saying something like that?
So the question is, it's not fair that people are punished when they don't know that they're transgressing, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, the child doesn't know that fire is going to burn, so he sticks his hand in the fire. Too bad. And that is, material nature is cruel like that in a sense. Just because, or you didn't know that you couldn't fly and you jump off the top of something, as a kid, well, the result will be your death probably. So that's how material nature is very severe. That's what Prabhupada writes in many purports, like the laws of nature or the laws of God are very severe. So therefore, there's a need for education. So Krishna has given the Shastra for educating the world. And the leaders of the world, they're supposed to be the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, like the government basically now. And those who are supposed to be guiding the government, they're supposed to be giving education so that people are saved from sinful reactions. But instead of educating them and how to worship God, they're giving them education and how to work hard like us. Not even how to live nice life, just how to work hard. So the consequences are dire. As just as Sri Rupa Goswami, when describing Vaidhi Bhakti, so he says this Vaidhi Bhakti is for everybody. The whole religious world is supposed to be doing Vaidhi Bhakti. Whether they're into Bhakti as like a goal of life or not, everyone's got to do Vaidhi Bhakti just to maintain the integrity of the social world. So he quotes this verse in the beginning of chapter 5 of the 11th canto, when the Navayogendras is speaking. So there in that particular verse, it says that, first it gives a description of the universal form of God and how the social body comes from the universal form. So the Brahmanas from the head, the Kshatriyas from the arms, the Vaishyas the stomach, the Shudras the legs. And then it says all of them are meant for worshiping the Supreme Lord. And if they neglect to worship the Lord, the word is used, avajananti, nabajanti, avajananti. So if they don't worship the Lord because of ignorance, so nabajanti means not worshiping because of ignorance. And avajananti means not worshiping because of impudence. You may be knowing all these things and you say, what is the Supreme Lord? Like that, atheism or whatever. So either way, then that society, nabajanti, avajananti, stanam bhrashta patantyada. So that society will go to hell. So Sri Goswami is saying, whoever you are, just even for social integrity, Vaidhi Bhakti should be there. So the leaders are supposed to give education in this. They're teaching people how to work. That is not education, actually. We don't accept that as education. Education means teaching people ultimately how to worship God. And then some of the good qualities. Amani Tuam Adambi Tuam, like from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, 8 through 12. Humility, pridelessness, simplicity, nonviolence, etc., tolerance, and so on. That is accepted as education. And just teaching people how to work hard like an ass is not education. With that sort of thing, they will do all nonsense later. It is not education. We do not accept. So now devotees, they're encouraging everyone. Our movement's gone through many stages. So In the early 2000s, that's when I joined. So that time there was a strong push for devotees to become educated, which meant go to the university. So now that became, more and more part of like our mainstream thinking in our family. Get educated, go to school. Now people are starting to see how toxic the modern education system is. It's becoming more and more obvious as the world is becoming increasingly insane that even this education system is so problematic in so many ways. We do not accept it as education. So if you don't give people education, then the result of their ignorance is suffering. That's just how that cookie crumbles. How is it fair? Fair or not fair, that's how that cookie crumbles. If you're ignorant, you get to suffer. That's just how it is. So therefore, society should be set up in such a way that people are educated in how to live at least minimally pious life according to the edicts of God. Okay, we say Vedas, of course, that's the real one. All right, fine, you can do Bible or this, that, and the other. So at least follow that, follow something. But now you want to follow your own whims. So you get the result of that. The trade-off is you get to suffer. So whether it's fair or not, that's how the cookie crumbles. So, now, if I had to, you're saying as a preaching point. So if I had to articulate it to some people who are like sensitive about it, I would choose my words a little bit more carefully than I'm saying them now. But I would basically make the same point. I stick by this confidently, that you can't be not educated, or you say educated to live in folly and not expect the consequences. So that's just the way that cookie crumbles. And everyone's always concerned about fairness. I always say it is fair to a fault because the fault is you don't know how it's fair. In fact, it is fair, but you don't understand how it's fair. Like karma, law of karma. People are getting reactions for things that have happened in previous lives, so they don't see the connection. So people often ask, well, how can they learn from that? They don't know the connection. And you got to figure it out. Got to go to some persons and think deeply, what do I have to learn from this? So it is fair because you're getting the fruit of your own activity. So but it is fair to a fault because you don't know why that reaction is coming, at least not by direct perception. At best, you can like do some logical deduction and maybe come to some understanding. So it is fair to a fault. So it is not that it is not fair, but it is fair to a fault. So yeah, I would definitely probably temper my language a little bit if talking to sensitive people who are really preoccupied with the notions of fairness and so on. But I think we have to stick by this, that human life means to follow the laws of God. Animal life, they don't have to be concerned about that. But a human life, that means following the laws of God. Top nayam deho deham bajamne loke kashtan kama arhete vidbujamye. Tapodevyam putra kanyena satnam shudya yasma brahma sokyam tunanta. Human life not meant for doing sense gratification like the hogs and dogs that eat stool. That's Rishabhde's first statement. Tapodivyam, human life meant for tapasya. And tapodivyam, divine austerity. By which putra kanyena satnam shudya, by which one's being, sattva, one's beingness can be purified. Shudya. We know what type of dark stuff is going on inside. We need the principles by which that darkness can be removed. Otherwise, what is your education? Just like C.S. Lewis, he has some quote that modern education is better at creating a more clever devil than in creating someone who's useful for society. He has some quote like that. It is mostly good for creating a more clever devil. Why more clever devil? Because that education not teaching them how to remove the darkness inside. We were talking about this yesterday also. You were there for Chaitanya Charitamrita class. So I gave example, because, people are always saying, trust this one, trust that one in the modern political scheme. So I was like, the reason we don't trust is not because they're not competent. The reason we don't trust is because they are competent, but they're not good people. or if they have darkness in their heart that hasn't been reconciled, then their competence creates actual danger for society. I gave pop culture examples like Lex Luthor or the Joker, all these antagonists in these famous hero stories. They're all like super smart and super competent. And that's what makes them so dangerous, because they're super smart and competent, but the darkness in their heart hasn't been removed. So Rishabdev said, Tapodivyam putra kanyena sattvam shudyat. You're supposed to do divine austerity by which the beingness can be purified. That is education. And then, of course, if you do that, Brahma Sokyam Twanantam, you get to experience the happiness, unlimited happiness. So you don't giving people the education, then you get to suffer. That's how that cookie crumbles, sweetie. And that's how I'm standing by that. I would say that I would definitely unapologetically say that. I would definitely try to temper the language so it doesn't land so heavy. But this is the point. We have to understand that human life is meant for following the laws of God. And if you don't follow the laws of God, the trade-off, it's a trade-off. You don't have to follow, but there's a trade-off. And the trade-off is you get to suffer. That's the trade-off. And if you do follow the laws of God, you don't get to just do whatever you want. But the trade-off is that you purify your inner being, which means you get to experience more satisfaction in life and you can make progress, even empirically and also spiritually. So that's how I stick to it. That's our talking point.
Okay, thank you so much.
So I'm getting a direct message that if it's not education, then what will you call it? Well, we call it ignorance. Yay, A for Vidya. Just like Krishna says in Gita, chapter 13, verse 8 through 12, you're going to see it. So he gives this long list of the question actually from Arjuna is, what is education? That is actually Arjuna's question. He's asking three pairs of questions. What is Prakriti Purusha? What is Kshetra Kshetragya? And what is education? And what is the object of education? Those are his three pairs of questions. So when Krishna's answering the question, what is education? So he says this, he gives a long list: humility, pridelessness, simplicity, nonviolence, tolerance, and so on. Long list is there. And he says, aside from, I think it's like 18 or 20 items he mentions. Then he says, aside from these, everything else is ignorance. So that's actually what we call it. It's ignorance. And yeah, encouraging people to go be educated in ignorance, I don't know. Doesn't seem like a really good idea. That's what we call it. Of course, people need to learn how to do something. So we're not against that, obviously. We have to learn how to live in this world. But that part is actually easy. Spending, 12 years, like from 5 to 18, I think honestly is a waste of time. Usually, if you want to learn something by which you can live, you just go to, what do you call it? Like you go to the person who's expert in that thing, and you work under their tutelage for half a year, then you learn how to do it, then you take up the work. Easy. Previously, when family structures were stronger, you apprentice. Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. Usually before, when family structures were strong, you just did the work that your father did, right? That's how it was. Again, Varnashram culture is socially rigid. So you couldn't just explore what you wanted to be. That was not allowed, really. So you kind of just did what your father did. That was kind of the system. Women, of course, had, they got married and they took up the, service of their husband was their main preoccupation. That's Varnashram culture. So now we have the more socially free culture where you get to explore. Okay, the trade-off is you get to be bewildered. So you got to figure out who you are, who you want to be. Okay, fine. But to live in this world, you just go be an apprentice for someone, learn something, half a year or a year max, and then you just do that work and you can live. Then the rest of the time is for tapodivyam putra kanyena sattvam, this sort of thing. Purify your inner world. But no, we spend, 12 years, 5 to 18, learning this thing and that thing. And then when we graduate, we don't remember anything. The only thing I remember from my upbringing in the schooling system is how to type. That's the only thing that I use to this day. Everything else I forgot. US history, European history, AP. I was taking all these AP courses, honors, English, reading all these books, that book. Remember literally nothing. And that's true also for college. People taking this liberal arts class, that thing that they come out of college, literally they remember nothing. And then they finally get a job. A lot of times people are getting jobs that are, it's not even related to what they were trained in school. I'm like, you could have just did that directly instead of wasting 4 years of your time, $40,000. It's a business scam. That is my personal opinion. In any case, I feel confident speaking like this as a follower of the Prabhupada, because Prabhupada was very heavy on modern education system. He said it is like the decoration of a dead body, or like a cobra having a jewel on its head. He speaks very heavy about it. And I think just looking at the condition of educated people now and how we're not any saner than the people we would criticize from the medieval world, I think Prabhupada has a point. So that's what we will call it. We call it ignorance. That's what we call it. Yeah, you don't come out of school educated, but you have a false sense of entitlement, right? As you're signing up for Starbucks to sell coffee. Yeah, you're better than everyone. It's not just a trick of it all. Yes, Agape, you had a follow-up point. I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's fine. Yeah, I was just back to the preaching point. I was thinking of another thing you could say to help someone who's like stuck in this current context. Is like, we're in Kali Yuga, and so the answer that you were giving of we need to have leaders who are teaching us the laws of God. That's not relevant anymore because that's not seemingly not relevant anymore because we're in Kali Yuga. But if you look at us as souls who have been living many lives, it's like we have had those opportunities. That was just another thing that came to mind. And then actually, I just have a quick quip of when you were saying that if we don't follow the laws of God, we suffer. But if we do, then we get to, like, you give some auspicious explanation. But in my head, it was like, also suffer, but, for a good cause, or at least making some, like, suffering with more meaning.
Yeah.
The last thing I wanted to bring up was when we were talking about how the senses, all these different, things that are Maya that can't perceive the Supreme Lord. It was making me think of what I heard yesterday about how the senses do practice bhakti and how it's because of the function aspect or the vritti aspect. So I'm assuming that Yamaraj is not talking about that when he's saying that the senses can't.
Yeah, he's not talking about bhakti just yet, right? So he was just talking about Supreme Lord. And why? Most people don't know the Supreme Lord. So they don't know because they're in Maya, Sprishta Maya. They're touched by Maya. They identify with products of Maya like body and mind. So they cannot know. But if you embrace bhakti, he's about to talk about that tomorrow, because now he's just brought up the true Dharma that is taught by the Mahajans. So now he will describe that as true Dharma is bhakti Dharma, beginning with chanting of the holy names. That's the next verse for tomorrow. So yeah, then when you do bhakti, then you gradually attain a gnosis. Enosis, or enosis is an English translation of the word tadatmya. This is a cool word. I always like finding these like cool words. Enosis. Oh my God. Yeah, here it is. Can y'all see my screen? Oh, I stopped sharing my screen. So I just share those vocabulary words. Enosis. So the political union of Cyprus and Greece as an aim or ideal of certain Greeks and Cyprus. And it's used, this is my computer dictionary is a little bit limited, but basically it's like the union of two political states where each political state still has its unique identity, but they're under like one banner. So it could be used as tadatmya is basically like that. So you're still technically two things, but you're like attaining like a oneness. So the common example is the iron rod entering into the fire and the fire becoming tadatmya with or the iron rod becoming tadatmya with fire. So it burns like fire and it's hot like fire and so on. It can give a little warmth like fire, but it's still an iron rod. It's still different. So tadatmya sambandha is like this. So agnosis is a good word. So yeah, when you do bhakti, then you attain agnosis with bhakti, like a tadatmya relationship. So then in that bhakti reveals the Supreme Lord. Bhakti amam abhijananti yavam yashtasmi tatata, Krishna says in the Gita. But without bhakti, you don't get to know. Yeah, it is a good word, right? I love finding words like this. It's just like fun. The English language is already pretty ghetto, but when you find cool words like that, it can spruce it up a little bit. Okay. Maybe we stop here for right now. It's 9:18. Good luck. Today's Akadashi. Have a nice Akadashi. Chant more rounds. Be happy as possible. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Shri Guru Gauriya Varga ki jai, Go Premanandi, Hari Hari Bo.